Alright guys, so we're going to go back at this again. Last video you guys saw that the car was still boosting at 24.5, 25 psi. So we're going to take the wastegates off, pull the springs, but before we do that I'm going to actually put a compressed air into them with a regulator to see what psi they start to crack open, and then to see what psi they're actually fully open. With this kit it just looks like the venting may not be all that great for them. So they might actually blow over their actual PSI rating. I did call and talk to the manufacturer. They did say that it is not uncommon. They do see this. They did recommend that I go down to 0.9 bar springs, which I believe is 13 PSI. So I do have that spring combination here in hand, so that's probably what I'm going to do. But for right now, I got to work on getting these things removed. I'm going to test them real quick with the air compressor, and then we'll swap out the springs, and then we'll go from there. Alright, so I got both my wastegates out right now, and I found something pretty interesting so far. So don't mind my crazy workbench here. But as you can see, this is the wastegate from the driver's side. This is the one from the passenger. So I have my air compressor set up, and it's regulated, so I'm able to adjust the pressure. Then I have an external mechanical boost gauge here, just kind of keep an eye on it and kind of see per reference as to what PSI starts to actually crack open. So interesting thing, I'm gonna put the camera right here to see if this will help. I've tested both of them already just to kind of make sure, but the crazy thing about this is that this setup, for whatever reason, with the springs I have in there right now, they are not opening until roughly 22, well actually 23 or 24 psi. Hence why we're seeing a lot of boost. So I'm gonna have to take these apart and see if maybe whenever I swapped out the springs I may have damaged something or maybe installed something incorrectly. But as of right now, what I'm seeing with these guys is boost is actually the valve itself isn't cracking open until about 24. Around 15 or so, 17, I can start to feel air coming out of this port, and you can hear it as well. But then after, it'll just do that until about 24 or so PSI, and then that's when you'll see the valve start to open. And then the more PSI you give it, the more it'll actually want to open. I didn't want to go past that. But as of right now, it looks like whatever spring combo I have on here, I either installed something wrong or there might be something wrong with both of my wastegates. This is the first time I've ever dealt with external wastegates. I've always had stock frame turbos on the car until now, so it's a big possibility that I may have messed something up. But that's part of us doing what we do and learning and getting involved with tuners who understand how to troubleshoot and diagnose things and can help you along the way, especially when you're e-tuning. That is a big thing. There's countless of stories out there of people who try to get e-tuned, and then the tuner is kind of like, yeah, check this, check that, but it doesn't really give them any help. Melody has been pretty good. He's been really good with kind of giving me some information here and telling me, hey, this is what you should be looking at, take a look at this. He's really good at diagnosing issues, and it seems to be paying off here. So I'm going to try to see if I can run this, and then I can show you guys exactly what's going on with it. Alright guys, reposition the camera so that way you guys can kind of see what I'm talking about here. So I'm going to go ahead and start my air compressor up. I'm going to start pushing in a little bit of air, a little bit at a time. And here pretty soon you should start hearing some air going through it. Right there you can hear some of the air coming through. And honestly that is at about 9 psi. More air gushing through. More air. Right now we're roughly at around 15 psi, still no valve movement. Right there we're at about 18. We're at 20. 21. There it changed a little bit, and there the valve starts to move, about 24 psi. And of course it goes more open as more pressure is introduced. But obviously that is incorrect, so there's something wrong here, and now I'm gonna have to tear these down and figure out what I messed up. Alright guys, I just wanted to quickly show you that I truly had a green spring in here in case there's any doubt. I'm finally taking off the final two bolts here. Alright, and then I can also show you what the diaphragm looks like, just in case. But see, green spring. Alright. And here's my two, I'll put these over here. And then the diaphragm itself. As you can tell, everything looks pretty decent. There's no tears. There shouldn't be, since this is a brand new setup. But you never know. And looking at stuff here, no tears in the diaphragm anywhere. Everything looking good. So, alright, so I'm gonna put this back on there. Here we go again. We're testing these springs that I have. So initially I had a black and a blue spring in both of the wastegates. This wastegate here has been disassembled, inspected. The diaphragm is looking really good still. No issues, no tears, no binding of any sort. And then the other one I have not messed with yet. That still has a black and blue spring that I was running previously. And both wastegates were actually opening up around 24 psi. So that tells me that we may have some issues with the springs. The springs are listed on the sites for whatever pressure they're supposed to open. I'm honestly thinking that those are not correct. I went ahead and took off the blue spring. I have it right here actually, so you guys can see it. Took that one off. I just installed the black spring in, and I wanted to show you guys something. So the black spring I believe is rated for 0.6 psi. Or sorry, 0.6 bar. 1 bar equals about 14. I can do the math here in a little bit to let you guys know what that is. But I'm going to test these springs, and I'm going to show it on camera, and I'm going to pass this on so that way people are aware of how these things are working essentially. Let's try to put this camera right here so you guys can probably even see this valve open up a little bit and at what psi it actually opens at. If it wants to cooperate, which I doubt it'll cooperate. Anyway, we'll just ditch this for now. Alright, so essentially what we have now is I'm just going to go ahead and use the compressed air setup that I have. I have my little regulator here. I'm going to go ahead and start introducing some air to the system. Right now, I'm looking at the gauge straight on. I can see the needle moving inside of it somewhat. Alright, you can hear air starting to come out of it now. Alright, right now I believe she's at about 10 psi. So here in a second we should start seeing this thing move a little bit. Right there, the valve starts to crack open. Right now we are at about 11, almost 12 psi. It started moving at about 11. The valve cracked open. That's with the black spring. So that one's also listed, like I said, as a 0.6 bar PS or 0.6 bar spring. Now, the more I give it, the more that valve starts to open. Looking at the gauge here, at about 14 or so, just under 15 psi, it is open. I don't know if you guys can see that, hopefully you can. And there it is. That's with the black spring only. So, funny thing is that the combination of a black and a blue spring should have given me 17 psi, which they're not. It's actually letting the valve stay closed up into about 24 psi, and obviously that's not right. That's telling me that these springs are not rated for what they are. So I think I'm going to test each spring to make sure, and then I'm going to find the combination of springs that will work for the setup we have. I'm going to aim for about 15 psi. So as of right now, I think the black spring might be the better choice. But I will pick you guys back up here once I swap everything back out. Alright guys, so here is the blue spring. The blue spring is now going to be the one in the actual wastegate, and here we go, applying some air. All right, jumped up to about 4 psi there, no movement. 5. All right, we're up to about 8 psi, no movement. All right, we're at 10, no movement. All right, now it's starting to crack open at about 11. And fully open 15. All right, I believe I tested this one already, but I just wanted to give you guys another look at it. 15 psi, fully open, and that's the blue spring. So, which is kind of funny because I believe the blue spring and the black spring are pretty much giving me the same results. I believe the black spring had opened up at around 11. I'm dropping the pressure down now. She's sitting at about 6 psi. I'm gonna give it a little bit more. I'm gonna try this again and make sure. Yep, cracking open at about 10, 11 psi. And fully open. I'm gonna try to get it to sit at 14 to see how she does. About 14 psi. Fully open. So, similar to the black spring, but which makes sense, you know what I mean? I had the black and the blue in there together, and I was seeing 24 psi when these things started to crack open. And at one point, I did surpass the 24 psi, 25, and it was getting close to that 30 psi mark. But yeah, I think she was fully open closer to that 30 psi mark, which makes sense. Both of those springs together would net you about 30 psi. Yeah, so there you go. We're picking back up here with version 5 of the map. So I had to take a little bit of time to figure out my wastegate issues, and I have a new mic, so hopefully you guys are able to hear me a little bit more. So it turned out, after doing some testing, you guys should have seen this in the previous video, the maps aren't, or the springs weren't what they were listed as. For example, black spring, which is what I have installed right now on these on the wastegates. They should have been rated at a I believe those were like an 8 psi spring, and I was actually getting them to crack open at about 11, fully open by like 13, 14 psi or so, actually 15 on my bench test. So what we're gonna do now is I'm driving the car a little bit just to get it up to temp and let it do its thing. We're gonna go ahead and do a third gear pull, so that way I can record that data and send it to BD, so that way he can start making the adjustments now for the wastegate and making the adjustments for boost. But I'm just trying to get some temp in the car. Haven't driven the car really lately, so I'm just trying to make sure that we're good to go before I start stomping on it. I did install a test pipe on it as well, so it's probably a little bit louder than before. So I'm also trying that stuff out. Rearrange the downpipe, or kind of move the downpipe a little bit too, so that way hopefully it doesn't tap on the cross member anymore. But I will pick you guys back up here in a little bit. I'm just gonna go ahead and try to find a good spot to do that third gear pull, and then make sure I have no traffic or nobody around me or anything like that. And then you guys can see what boost I'm hitting now, and where we're at as far as how the car is performing. All right, so I found a little bit further down the road, there was a good little spot to turn around in. Traffic is minimal over here. So I'll go ahead and do the third gear pull here in a minute, so that way you guys can see. All right, and that was it. And here's the log, or the 13.9 psi is what we were able to do with just wastegates, and that's with the 2 black springs installed, one on each of the wastegates themselves.
So this is, I'm using a virtual dyno as a reference point. By no means am I relying on these numbers. A couple of things about where Victor is. He's actually a little bit high altitude, so I did have to compensate, as you can see on the left-hand upper side, the virtual dyno parameters. The mercury barometric pressure and the temperature. So anytime I do look at other people's virtual dyno, I definitely am looking at to see if they set the temperature and the barometric pressure correctly. And if I don't see it, I know there's something going on there. But either way, this is a reference point for where we are now, and then what boost we want to stop. And then we're actually going to put this on a real dyno, like a dynojet or something, and actually see what we're making, because he's going to be tuning on E85 stock block. I definitely do want to see actual numbers. The issue here with ethanol is knock. Usually knock is a deterrent and a point where we stop increasing timing and boost. But with ethanol, because it's such a good knock deterrent, we won't know. And we will definitely cross the power that the stock internals can handle. That's why you always want to tune E85 on a dyno. So we did a few runs and we increased the wastegate and boost slowly, and these were the results. On the yellow graph, or orange for some people, as you can see, we stopped halfway because it was starting to overboost. So we stopped it there, but we fixed everything and we found our wastegate that we need for the boost that we want. And basically, it's turning out pretty good. Now, this is not to start a debate about the accuracy of virtual dyno. As with all dynos, especially virtual dyno, it's a reference tool. We started on the same patch of road, same car, same parameters that we set in, same temperature, same everything, gear, same everything. So regardless of if it's accurate or not, the same result, same formula has been used for the first to the last. So you do see an increase. You put this car in any dyno, it'll literally make 100 and whatever horsepower over what you first started. So that is the purpose of the dyno. Now, Vic's car, as I mentioned earlier, is a stock bottom. We are going to put it in a dynojet, I think he's using, to make sure that he's not crossing the limits of his stock bottom. But yeah, this is basically to show you guys what the process is for e-tuning.
Went back and readjusted wastegates and did his magic there on the ROM, and boost on version 9 was about 25, 26, mostly 26, so pretty much what we were targeting. So now on this one, on this version, we're just fine-tuning the boost a little bit more, and just doing a couple little tweaks here and there. So I'm going to be driving the car. I'm just going to let it go ahead and warm up again, just do its thing, take it out for a little drive, so that way you guys can see how the car drives and how it sounds, and hopefully everything is pretty audible now with the new mic. But for the most part, right now I'm driving it and it has 14 and a half or so AFR. I'm just going to cruise for a little bit, let it do its thing. Just want to make sure she's fully warmed up, everything's good to go, everything's happy. And so far, again, this car is driving pretty smooth. It amazes me how smooth it is compared to what it used to be, and I thought it was pretty smooth last time. It may have had just a couple little hiccups here and there, but again, I can talk crap about that too, that was mine. So I'm just gonna go ahead and enjoy the drive. Are still within that mid 14s, 15-ish. It's perfect. Driving pretty good, driving smooth. That partial pull that I did over there was pretty good. It felt really, really good, real responsive. guys heard the little backfire, which was perfect. Now it's just time to cruise it back home. Alright guys, so here I am back in the garage, and as you can tell, made it back in one piece. And again, here's a shot of the engine bay. Alright, so during that last pull, yeah, it was pretty good. Definitely pretty good. Like I said, it was just something that I just kept pulling, and then kind of amped up a little bit more there towards like mid pull, I guess. So it could have just been a combination of just the boost settings and timing, who knows what. But I mean, it felt really good. I'm about to send that data over to BD so that way he can go ahead and review everything to see how it all looked. So like I said before, with this thing being a stock block car, I'm not trying to go too crazy with it. The goal was roughly 500 on the ethanol fuel, which I think we're pretty close. I think the next revisions we're looking at doing will possibly be on the dyno, just to make sure everything is good. But again, couldn't be happier. The car drives smooth, it's responsive. The issue that I was having before with every time I would give it a little bit of throttle from a stop, it would go lean. He was able to correct that as well. So there isn't much more that I think we can really do. I think the next stuff will be 91 octane tuning, just to get it on the 91 map. But that'll be in a little bit after we do the dyno tune for ethanol and get that squared away. And honestly, for the most part, I might just drive this thing mostly on ethanol because it's fun. It's definitely fun. We got done with this one, did the version 10 pull. Oh, it was great. It was awesome. It felt good. It definitely felt good. Yeah, so I think in the near future for this one, we're going to look at getting, like I said, the 91 octane tune squared away, making sure everything is good to go. And I might look at a different set of wheels and tires for it, just for track time whenever the track does open here, and then see what it does. Hopefully I can go out to the track, run a personal best, and have fun with it. Again, my biggest concern with it being a stock block car, 100,000+ miles, is the fact that it has 100+ miles on the stock block. And there were somewhat rough 100,000 miles, you know, so this car has been through different turbo setups, mostly stock frames, boosting anywhere from 25 to 28 PSI. And, you know, car ran great. Car did everything I asked it to. Never once have I had a major issue with the car, knock on wood. The major issue I ever had with this thing is when my throwout bearing decided to just split apart, and I had to repair all that. But other than that, that's it. I mean, everything, if there was any hiccups other than that throwout bearing, that was caused by me. So again, I'm pretty happy with how the car came out. It's driving great. Yeah, and like I said, I'm gonna get ready to upload the log so that way he can review it, and I'm sure he'll share with you guys what he's seeing and what he's having to do on his end.
So that went pretty well. It was really a nice tuning Vic's car because he was very, very interested. He wasn't one of those people that, oh, just tune my car and this. We were having discussions. He would call me, ask me questions, and, you know, I would love to answer. And he was genuinely, he's one of those guys that are interested in cars. He's an enthusiast and appreciates everything he can learn or understand. And there are some things that, you know, I would tell him, and I would ask him to cross-reference, because that is my opinion. He needs to, or everybody needs to, just you know, make a decision on facts on their own, based on, you know, what available in the market. But his car was pretty good. Again, we stopped here because, again, I don't really know how much power it's making. It is a virtual dyno. I know there's a lot of debate about it. I do not want to turn this into a debate about virtual dyno, because it has its usage. But I'll just say that if it was as accurate as people say it is, there would be no need for regular dynos. But moving forward, I want to thank everybody for watching these videos. I started these series, especially the e-tuning series, because there was a lot of questions. I think I do e-tunes, and people have experiences, past experiences on e-tuning, and they get it confused on what it really is. So it's basically the tuner's not physically there. The person who owns or is going to be responsible for the car basically does the logging and the wide open throttle, but it's the tuner's responsibility to pinpoint and exactly let you know. And I kind of go a little bit above and make my life a little easier and kind of diagnose a few things so we can move forward. So I just wanted to show what e-tuning with me is like. Hopefully this answers a lot of questions that people have been asking. And it's not just about me. This is basically the typical process with every tuner. So we're going to end the video here, but keep those questions coming. I have been out of it for the last 3 weeks, I think. There was a lot going on in the shop, and it was I just couldn't make any videos. We thought it was going to be slow, but it actually wasn't. So keep your questions coming. I will answer them as, when I get a chance, and let me know if you want your questions to be aired on my video. Really appreciate it. Take care, guys.